Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Janalava Giridharadhari Gopi Janalava Giridharadhari Jaya Gopi Janalava Giridharadhari Gopi Yashoda Nandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Spirit.
And also with your spirit. I was thinking Jamal was going to chime in. And also with your spirit. I always get weirded out. I actually found myself at Mass recently, weirdly enough, by random circumstance. Last Thursday, I ended up at Catholic Mass in the afternoon. And it was a miracle. It was just a weird set of circumstances that happened, but I was sitting in there, I was like, why is this so different from when I was a kid?
Yes, it's that language change, huh? The 2013 language change, you mean?
Yeah. 2013 is about when I decided I was an atheist. And I started to decide that I was God at that age. And then shortly thereafter is when I decided that actually maybe Krishna's God.
It's only when you play guitar you're God.
So we would like to think. Okay, continuing with the prayers of Queen Kunti, very auspicious prayers. I'd like to welcome Bhagavata Sanga to our Bhagavata Sanga. Satam prasanga mama virya samvido bhivanti ritkarna rasayana kata tajjosanara svapavarga varmani shadaratir bhaktir anukamishati. We're on text. I think we're on 32. Yeah. Okay. I'll read the Sanskrit and someone can read the shloka and the verse. The purport. Kashchidahorajam jatam yodo priyasyanuvavyaye malayasyeva chandanam. That's it. Wait. Yeah. Kashchidahorajam jatam punyashlokasya kirtaye yodo priyasyanuvavyaye malayasyeva chandanam. Someone can read?
Translation. Some say that the unborn is born for the glorification of pious kings. And others say that he is born to please King Yadu, one of your dearest devotees. You appear in his family as sandalwood appears in the Malaya desert, Malaya hills. Purport. Excuse me. Because the Lord's appearance in this material world is bewildering, there are different opinions about the birth of the unborn. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that he takes his birth material world, although he is the Lord of all creation and he is unborn. So there cannot be any denial of the birth of the unborn because he himself establishes the truth. But still there are different opinions as to why he takes his birth. That is also declared in the Bhagavad Gita. He appears by his own internal potency to reestablish the principles of religion, to protect the pious and to annihilate the impious. That is the mission of the appearance of the unborn. Still it is said that the Lord is there to glorify the pious King Yudhisthira. Lord Sri Krishna certainly wanted to establish the kingdom of the Pandavas for the good of all the world. When there is a pious king ruling over the world, the people are happy. When the ruler is impious, the people are unhappy. In the age of Kali, in most cases, the rulers are impious, and therefore the citizens are also continually unhappy. But in the case of democracy, the impious citizens themselves elect their representatives to rule over them, and therefore they cannot blame anyone for their unhappiness. Maharaj Nala was also celebrated as a great pious king, but he had no connection with Lord Krishna. Therefore, Maharaj Yudhisthira is meant here to be glorified by Lord Krishna. The Lord had already glorified King Yadu, having taken birth in his family. And although he is known as Yadava, Yaduvira, Yadunandana, etc., he is always independent of such obligation. He is just like the sandalwood that grows in the Malaya hills. Trees cannot grow anywhere and everywhere, yet because the sandalwood tree grows mostly in the area of the Malaya hills, the name sandalwood and the Malaya hills are interrelated. Therefore, the conclusion is that the Lord is ever unborn like the sun, and yet he appears as the sun rises on the eastern horizon. And as the sun is never the sun of the eastern horizon, so the Lord is one's son, is no one's son, but he is the father of every.
So these texts 32 through 35 are going to speak about the various, people are reasoning as to why Krishna appears, but the point is that Krishna is unborn in this verse, that Krishna has unborn take birth. So this is all the different sections of the Queen Kunti prayers. There's these different sections, and then at 29, she begins to speak about the inconceivable nature of Krishna. Because no one can understand his pastimes. And that Krishna, although he's God, he's coming in the form of these aquatics. He's coming in the form of, Vraha, in the form of, Matsya, these various forms. And so it's very bewildering, especially to one who's not a devotee. We spoke about that last week. Krishna says, Bhakti mama vijananti yavanyas yasmi tatvatha tatamam tatvato gyatas vishate tadanantaram. Only by bhakti yoga can you understand Krishna. And so for the devotees, we can easily accept that Krishna came in the form of a half man and half lion. We can accept that Krishna came in the form of a boar, in the form of a fish, because we have bhakti, and therefore we have expanded consciousness. Even new bhakta, his consciousness is expanded to where he can accept and understand these things. And he always understands the reason for the Lord's activities, because he understands the supreme nature of the Lord. The supreme nature of the Lord is that the Lord is all pleasure. Everything Krishna does is because of his own sweet will. And it's not because of he's forced to take birth, like we're forced to take birth. We're forced to act in so many ways because of lust. Because of the modes of material nature, we're forced to act. If you had the option right now to just opt out of material life and become a pure devotee, would you? Would you? I mean, if you have the option just to say, I'm going to go back to Godhead right now, Krishna's here, and he says, hey, come back to Godhead with me. Would you go?
Yep.
We have one liberated soul here. Right? Yeah. Or would you say, and then all your material plans have to stop at that point, though, right? It's like, oh, wait a minute. All those plans got to go out the window now. Krishna. Oh, yeah. So we're not as pure as we thought, perhaps. So we have to have that kind of consciousness. Krishna comes, we're ready to go. That's the consciousness. We're attached to Krishna. And so someone has to realize the nature of this material world. If you don't realize the nature that the material world is not a very light place, it's a place full of darkness, a dark world. I was talking to Parameshwar Prabhu last Sunday some few weeks ago. I think it was Saturday, maybe. Some night. And he was saying, it was Friday night after Harnam. He was saying, I realized at a certain point this is a dark world. I realized this is a dark world. So it's very fortunate for someone to realize that this is a dark world. If you don't realize that, then you don't have the opportunity to actually really sincerely desire Krishna. Because you'll think, I can have a nice, enjoyable life. So Krishna comes, you should be ready. So the reason that Krishna appears is for various reasons. Paritranaya sadhanam vinashaya tradiskatam dharma samstapanartaya sambhavami yuge yuge. Krishna says, I come to annihilate the demons and to protect the devotees and to reestablish the principles of religion. But Krishna can do all those things without himself appearing. So the devotees really understand that Krishna comes for the pleasure of his devotees and to give us pleasure. And so if you actually understand that, Prabhupada said, you're liberated. And so there's one, Krishna says that, but there's one example. Prabhupada was speaking to some disciples and he was saying, why does Krishna appear? And he said, Parjanaya sadhanam vinashaya. Prabhupada said, no. And they were all kind of speculating at a certain point. Finally, one devotee said, Krishna comes for the pleasure of his devotees. And Prabhupada said, you will go back to Godhead. Because he understood that Krishna is doing everything for the pleasure of his devotees. So a devotee as bhakti can understand Krishna's playful nature. Krishna is supreme. And therefore, because Krishna is supreme, everything he does is just totally for fun. I was speaking with Jagaranga Prabhu when he was visiting, and he was saying, he was having a really horrible day out on book distribution. And he almost started to cry. He was like, really one of those days where it breaks you. And he was sitting down, he realized, he's peeing on the floors of the gopis and doing all these things. So I'm sitting here suffering and Krishna's having fun. And when we realize Krishna is the supreme enjoyer, then we can also be an enjoyer. But when we try to enjoy, we can't enjoy. Even if we try to enjoy our so-called devotional service. How can we enjoy? Because Krishna is the enjoyer. And in understanding that this devotional service is giving pleasure to the enjoyer, now I'm participating in the enjoyment of the enjoyer. And therefore I can enjoy. But otherwise, no question of enjoyment. Because somehow you want to enjoy. So Prabhupada said if you're attached to a beautiful sunset, you have to come back. So, there's so many things. So that's 32. 33 is just explaining apare vasudevasya devakyam yachito bhagyat ajastvam asya kshenaya valaya chasuradvisham. That others say that since both Vasudeva and Devaki prayed for you, you have taken your birth as their son. Undoubtedly, you are unborn, yet you take birth for the welfare and to kill those who are envious of the demigods. So here we're having another example. Krishna is coming for the pleasure of Devaki and Vasudeva. Krishna is coming for the pleasure of his devotees because they were such nice devotees. He wanted to take birth with them. And then text 34. Bharavatara anyanye bhuvonava ivo dadao sirantya buribarena jato yatma bhuvartita. Others say that the world being overburdened like a boat at sea is much aggrieved, and that Brahma, who is your son, prayed for you, and you have appeared to diminish the trouble. So, interesting point about the incarnation of Krishna can be understood. And I was speaking to one boy here in the Krishna Cove last week, and he asked me, so why are you worshiping Krishna if Krishna is an incarnation of Vishnu? It's a very good question. Anybody want to take a shot at that?
Krishna's original.
Yeah. Ete chamsha kalu pumsa Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam Indriyayi Lokyam Indrayi Vakilam Lokam Hridayanti Yuge Yuge. Out of all the various forms and incarnations, Krishna is the original Swayam Bhagavan. He appears whenever there's a disturbance with the demigods to defend and defeat the enemies of Indra millennium after millennium. This is considered the seed verse of Srimad Bhagavatam. We already went over that, chapter 3. Actually, Krishna is an incarnation of Vishnu, but he's also not. That's the point, is that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself, who's absorbed in the pastimes of Goloka Vrindavan. Krishna is simply enjoying. But whenever the time arranges itself that the incarnation of Vishnu is scheduled to come and do some service of annihilating the demons and doing all the things that Vishnu does, at that time, if the incarnations match up, Krishna comes with all the various forms of Krishna are within the body of Krishna. And so when Krishna is killing demons, it's not Krishna. It's what they call Vasudeva Krishna. He's not actually Krishna, Akila Rasamrita Murti, who is the Supreme Lord of Vrindavan. That Krishna never leaves Vrindavan. And so the incarnation of Krishna, it is Krishna, but it's not actually the same. It's Krishna acting in the capacity of Vishnu. And so whenever Krishna is doing the killing of demons, the Vishnu part of Krishna. Whenever Krishna is loving his devotees, that's the Krishna part of Krishna. And so we can take a similar example from Lord Chaitanya, that every Kali Yuga needs a Yuga avatar, but not every Yuga avatar is Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Krishna himself. There's no difference. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the avatari. He's not an incarnation of Krishna. He's Krishna. He's not an incarnation. He's not an avatar. He's Krishna himself, who's just changed his form gold. But whenever there needs, it just so happened that Krishna, out of his pleasure, his desire to experience the love of Radha and to experience the love of being his own devotee, appeared with the incarnation of Vishnu to bring the Yuga Dharma. That's described in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So, I mean, I've heard various, I guess there's speculations, different devotees say that in different Kali Yugas, the holy name, the chanting holy name is present, but it's not that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the bringer of it necessarily. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is a very special incarnation, or non-incarnation. He's Krishna himself. So in the same way, Krishna comes, he's absolute. He comes with all of his forms and expansions, and then they act, but Krishna, he doesn't ever act in that sense of killing the demons. Krishna is the real Krishna in Goloka Vrindavan and in the pastimes of Vrindavan Dham. And so then the next verse is the real reason for Krishna's appearance. Avesmin kriyamananam avidya kamakarmavi Shravana smaranarani karishyani tikechana. And yet others say that you appeared for the sake of rejuvenating the devotional service of hearing, remembering, and worshiping, and so on, in order that the conditioned souls suffering from material pangs might take advantage and gain liberation. So Krishna comes to show us how wonderful Goloka Vrindavan is. And then Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments that the destruction of suffering is incidental. It's just a coincidence, or a consequence of the fact that the real result of trying to, hear about Krishna is that we see Krishna's lotus feet, not that we want our suffering destroyed. And so that's also an example given when Haridas Thakur has his argument with Gopala Chakravarti, and wherein Gopala Chakravarti is wanting to accept that the chanting of the holy name is sufficient itself to bring one liberation. If you chant the holy name one time, even if a Muslim's getting mauled by a boar and he yells haram, he goes back to Godhead. And there are individuals out there who become very disturbed by statements like this. Gopal Chakravarti was one of them. We had one guy who was coming around for a while, and we were telling him that. He was saying, false advertising! He was screaming at us like that. He was very mad. He was saying, how? We told him about Putana. Am I lying? Gauranga was there. He was actually talking like that. I'm not exaggerating in the slightest.
He was upset about the liberation.
Yeah, and we told about Putana. Putana was like, Putana, they were trying to inspire him, about the Lord's mercy, but it was not, he didn't like the Lord's mercy. I said, Putana was, ho bakiyam stanakala kutam, she was, killing children and drinking their blood, and then she got liberated, and he was like, worst sin! That's the worst sin! And he was so mad that she got liberated. He was so mad. Because he'd spent his whole life spending these thousands of dollars on going to these big retreats in the Himalayas, and he's not even a devotee. So this is Moga Shya Moga Karmano Moga Jnana Vachetasa Rakshashashi Masharim Chaiva Mohinim Prakritim Shritaha. Without my devotional service, Moga Shya Moga Karmano, all the karma and the jnana, they're useless. The culture of knowledge is useless. Your hopes for liberation are useless. But a devotee simply can become liberated. Therefore Krishna says, verse. He says that those who are not faithful in this devotional service cannot attain me. They return back to the path of birth and death. Ashradadana Purusha Dharmasyasya Parantapa Aprapyamam Nivartante Mrityu Samsara Vartani. They return back to this path of birth and death.
Did he consider himself liberated, this guy, and then he was just upset that he worked so hard to get liberation, and then
well, then he'd be like,
someone else.
I was trying to play the humble, I was like, well, I'm not such an advanced soul like you. At one point we were saying, well, the Bhakti Yoga process is for all of us. And I actually asked him, I said, have you ever sinned? He's like, no!
Do you have any anarthas? No, none.
Are you frustrated?
And then I was like, well, I said, I've sinned. I started telling about so you couldn't even qualify to see the people. It was real shadow, wow. And then,
Wow.
yeah, he was, but then he'd be really nice. He was actually kind of nice, and he was coming around. You guys would know what I'm talking about. He was coming here for a month. He was staying here for a month. Anyhow, he's very disturbed by this element that Krishna is so merciful. And it's hard to accept the pride because I want to do it myself. So Krishna comes to show the beauty of his mercy. Prabhupada said in the Srimad Bhagavatam, or Srimad Bhagavad Gita, the Lord asserts that he appears in every millennium just to establish the way of religion. The way of religion is made by the Supreme Lord. No one can manufacture a new path of religion, as is the fashion for certain ambitious persons. The factual way of religion is to accept the Lord as the supreme authority and thus render service unto him in spontaneous love. A living being cannot help but render service because he is constitutionally made for that purpose. The only function of the living being is to render service to the Lord. The Lord is great and the living beings are subordinate to him. Therefore, the duty of the living being is just to serve him only. Unfortunately, the illusioned living beings out of misunderstanding only become servants of the senses by material desire. This desire is called avidya, or nescience. And out of such desire, the living being makes different plans for material enjoyment centered about a perverted sex life. He therefore becomes entangled in the chain of birth and death by transmigrating into different bodies on different planets under the direction of the Supreme Lord. Unless, therefore, one is beyond the boundary of this nescience, one cannot get free from the threefold miseries of material life. That is the law of nature. The Lord, however, out of his causeless mercy, because he is more merciful than the suffering living beings they can expect, appears. Oh, no, sorry, read that again. That's great. Because he is more merciful to the suffering living beings than they can expect, appears before them and renovates the principles of devotional service, comprised of hearing and chanting, remembering, serving, worshiping, praying, cooperating, and surrendering unto him. Adoption of all the above mentioned items, or any one of them, can help the conditioned soul get out of the tangle of nescience and thus become liberated from all material sufferings created by the living being, illusioned by the external energy. This particular type of mercy is bestowed upon the living being by the Lord in the form of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. These are the reasons for Krishna's appearance. Very special, huh? The Lord, as Krishna is appearing to give us the opportunity to chant and hear about him, because if we don't see his pastimes or hear about his pastimes, we can't hear and chant about them. And it's a fact, when someone hears and chants about Krishna, they become very joyful. If you hear and chant, if you chant good japa, and you read Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, you become very happy. You become full of life. You become able to be enthusiastic in life. But if you don't hear about Krishna and we don't hear about other things, then soon we become dull. There's, famous point of the Bhagavatam. The Bhagavatam is about the Bhagavatam. It's what's amazing. The Bhagavatam is actually presenting the fact that you should hear Bhagavatam. It's selling itself. That the process of becoming liberated is to read the Bhagavatam. So that's the point. We just take some advantage of the Bhagavatam. If you read the whole Bhagavatam, it shifts your mind. It really does. It shifts your mind. Each canto has like an effect on the mind. And it makes it very hard to, become attracted by material energy. Because you see the futility. And you don't want to, sometimes you have that tendency to want to be like the guy who wants to go back in the Matrix. Have you ever seen the Matrix?
Guy that just wants to eat that.
Yeah, he's eating that steak. He's eating that steak, and he's like, it's like, I know it's not real. It tastes so good. It's like I want to forget it. And that's what Maya, she's like, we can arrange that. So we don't want to be that guy. We all secretly kind of want to be that guy. Deep down in our dark little hearts. Shrinvanti gayanti grinantyabikshnashaha smaranti nandanti devi hitam jana taeva pashyan yacharena tavakam bhava pravaho paramam param bojam. O Krishna, those who continuously hear, chant, and repeat your transcendental activities, or take pleasure in others doing so, certainly see your lotus feet, which alone can stop the repetition of birth and death. So this is beautiful here. This is so beautiful. Continuously hearing, chanting, and repeating your transcendental activities, or taking pleasure in others doing so, certainly see your lotus feet, which alone can stop the repetition of birth and death. This is the Hare Krishna movement. That's why we hear Bhagavatam every day, why we hear class every day. We take pleasure in the fact that Prabhupada was so absorbed in Krishna consciousness. We take pleasure in the devotees, like we see that, we all get so much pleasure. We have Parameshwar Prabhu here, and it's just such a nice thing having him around, because he sets this extremely high standard of what a devotee should be, and that Parameshwar is fully absorbed in the service of the Lord with no other distractions. And at all times, he's hearing, chanting, or serving Krishna. There's really no other point you see Parameshwar doing anything else. And, we see the result in how joyful he is. So we can take pleasure in the fact that we were not there yet, but we can take pleasure in the fact that there are devotees that are on that platform. We see, wow, And we get a lot of credit for that by just appreciating a devotee and by trying to render some service to such a devotee. We're all trying to render service to Prabhupada. So Krishna's purport. The Supreme Lord Sri Krishna cannot be seen by our present conditional vision. In order to see him, one has to change his present vision by developing a different condition of life full of spontaneous love of Godhead. When Sri Krishna was personally present on the face of the globe, not everyone could see him as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Materialists like Ravana, Hiranyakashipu, Kamsa, Jarasandha, and Shishupal were highly qualified personalities by acquisition of material assets, but they were unable to appreciate the presence of the Lord. Therefore, even though the Lord may be present before our eyes, it is not possible to see him unless we have the necessary vision. This necessary qualification is developed by the process of devotional service only, beginning with hearing about the Lord from the right sources. The Bhagavad Gita is one of the popular literatures which are generally heard, chanted, repeated, etc. by people in general. But in spite of such hearing, etc., sometimes it is experienced that the performer of such devotional service does not see the Lord face to face. The reason is that the first item, Shravana, is very important. If hearing from the right sources, it acts very quickly. Generally, people hear from unauthorized persons. Such unauthorized persons may be very learned by academic qualifications, but because they do not follow the principles of devotional service, hearing from them becomes a sheer waste of time. Sometimes the texts are interpreted fashionably to suit their own purposes. Therefore, first, one should select a competent and bona fide speaker and then hear from him. When the hearing process is perfect and complete, the other process becomes automatically perfect in their own way. I was speaking to one professor today at the campus. He's a nice guy, and I really respect him. But it was interesting because he's a Hindu professor. We know of him. And, we're going to do some program with him. But as I was speaking with him, he's bringing up so many things. And I was realizing this is all intellectual. And such a person is very difficult for them to get in their heart and actually. And so, as if my college degree gives me some authority over the scripture. And I was just kind of meditating on what gives one a spiritual authority. It has nothing to do with even your knowledge of scripture. It does to a degree, but not even as much your knowledge of scripture as it's your knowledge of the conclusion of scripture. Mm-hmm. Do you know the conclusion of scripture? And that's the point. And so, you know many things, but you've yet to understand even the point of all of it. And therefore, you remain on the mental platform, mode of goodness. And it's very sad, actually. I was saying this is very sad. This is very, very sad. Because all of these ideas, but no bhakti. Prabhupada was once with a Hindu professor. Prabhupada said, "Saul, what is Hinduism?" Professor actually said, "I don't know, Swamiji." Bad move there. And so Prabhupada looked at his PhD disciple, Sarup Damodar. He said, "What does that mean, Sarup Damodar?" Sarup Damodar said, "Cheater, Prabhupada, cheater." And the Hindu person was very offended. "Cheater, Prabhupada, cheater." So if you're preaching something or trying to explain something about the Vedic literatures, but you're not concluding Krishna, you're a cheater. And actually, there are envious cheaters and there are people who have been cheated and then are cheating others. We have to be merciful to them, but really it's important to understand that without the bhakti element, you're cheating people. Cheater. There are different transcendental activities of the Lord, and each and every one of them is competent to bestow the desired result, provided the hearing process is perfect. In the Bhagavatam, the activities of the Lord begin from his dealings with the Pandavas. There are many other pastimes of the Lord in connection with his dealings with the Asuras and others. And in the 10th canto, the sublime dealings with his conjugal associates, the gopis, as well as his married wives and Dwarka, are mentioned. Since the Lord is absolute, there is no difference in the transcendental nature of each and every dealing of the Lord. But sometimes people in unauthorized hearing process take more interest in hearing about his dealings with the gopis. Such an inclination indicates the lusty feelings of the hearer. So a bona fide speaker of the dealings of the Lord never indulges in such hearings. One must hear about the Lord from the very beginning, as in the Srimad Bhagavatam or any other scriptures. And that will help the hearer attain perfection by progressive development. One should not therefore consider that his dealings with the Pandavas are less important than his dealings with the gopis. We must always remember that the Lord is always transcendental to all mundane attachment. In all the above mentioned dealings of the Lord, He is the hero in all circumstances, and hearing about him or hearing about his devotees or combatants is conducive to spiritual life. It is said that the Vedas and the Puranas, etc., were all made to revive our lost relation with him. Hearing of all these scriptures is essential. So, yeah, can't pick and choose the Lord's pastimes. And sometimes I just noticed over the years that sometimes I'll like, oh, I need to hear some Krishna book, and I'll pick up Krishna book and I'll think like, I want to read this pastime. I never feel any like happiness because it's like it's picking and choosing consciousness. But when I just read where I'm at, even if I don't read it for a long time, I put it on and I'm going to read it progressively, then you'll feel so much happiness. Krishna, you're going to feel so much more happiness in that way when you kind of have a progressive way of reading. Yes, Prabhu.
Can you say all of what's in Shravana? So it's hearing the holy name, it's hearing Shastra, it's hearing Shastra explained by bona fide teachers. What else would be in that?
Hearing about devotees, the glories of pure devotees. Anything you're hearing about the Lord from a bona fide source is considered Shravana. Or hearing the holy name, yeah. Hearing the Maha Mantra from a bona fide source, hearing Krishna's names, that's all hearing. And so that's our main process. There's like some people ask, about sadhana. They ask me how long I meditate. It's common, because they're monks, and so I see like this. And how long do you meditate a day? And so I say, minimum of 6 hours. And it seems like crazy then, but I'm not lying when I say, yeah, we meditate for 6 hours, because I wake up 2, I start hearing Prabhupada until about 3. That's all meditation on it's Shravanam. It's intense, and there's nothing else to disturb me. It's just in the early morning. And then I chant japa from 3 to 5, then an hour of kirtan and the Mangal Artik, and then an hour and a half of hearing while I do my deity worship, and then more kirtan in Bhagavatam class. And so from 2 to 9 o'clock, which is actually 7 hours, we're hearing. That's full absorption. Ideally, sometimes I try not to say a word to anybody until breakfast, except absolutely necessary things. And just to be like fully absorbed in hearing. And that's all meditation. Whenever we're connected to that sound vibration, we're always going to feel so much bliss. As long as we do it in the right mood and right consciousness. It's important not to use the hearing as a means to drown out our problems, without facing certain things. Like we don't want to bypass. We want to actually deal with our problems and deal with things at hand. Not try to use hearing and chanting as a way to escape our duties, unless we're ready for that. That element is there too. But ideally, we can hear and chant all the time, as much as possible. And it also gives you a better impetus to learn about other things, because when you have the hearing and chanting really good, then when you learn about other things, you learn how to use them in your devotional life, because you start to develop actual consciousness where you start to think everything in terms of how am I going to serve Krishna with this. So we find sometimes devotees are very learned about various other topics. Like Vaisheshik Prabhu always amazes me by how much he knows about things that are not just Shastra. And so he reads a lot of stuff. He has to read these books that are not Shastrically based, but he's reading them so that he can serve Krishna with them. And the effect is there. You see how he does things in Silicon Valley. So we can have that consciousness, but it takes a certain amount of dedication to that study of the Bhagavatam and to that kind of process of hearing and taking it in. And that's what gives you the authority. It's not that even like you have so many shlokas memorized or anything like that. It's, are you saturated? And if you're saturated and you're surrendered, then you should be considered more of a spiritual authority than any so-called professor. I can teach about so many things, but it does not make me an authority on them. It doesn't mean I'm experienced. We can all theoretically understand martial arts, teach about where they come from, who the masters are, but that does not mean you're qualified to fight. And that being said, even a beginner martial artist is more qualified than you, no matter how much facts you know. So anybody who's an actual devotee is qualified to be, have something. But if you just don't accept Krishna, you don't understand the conclusion. This purpose of trying to tell me that yoga is not in the Bhagavad Gita. was blown away. He was trying to define yoga as just meaning Ashtanga yoga. He was saying Ashtanga yoga is not in the Bhagavad Gita.
It's explained.
And it may not be mentioned by name as Ashtanga yoga, but it is explained. And where is Ashtanga yoga coming? It's coming from Krishna. And so all these facts just serve to bewilder the conditioned soul. The poor conditioned soul just simply bewildered. What's the goal of Ashtanga yoga? Krishna gives the whole Ashtanga yoga process, and he says, Yoginam api sarvesham madgate antaratmana shravam bhajate yamam samayukta tamo mataha. Of all yogis, the greatest is he who thinks of me. They just, it's like, that would mean that even though I have done so much, and I have so much learning, that Bhakta Jack is a greater yogi than I am. And it's true. Any new Bhakta who comes to the temple, takes prasad, chants Hare Krishna, and does service, he's the highest class yogi. And so when you have, it's very, very, it's a very sad state of being, and that's why, Kunti Maharani prayed. Janmaishvarya Shruta Shribir Edamana Madapraman Naivart Hart Yabadatum Vai Twama Kinchana Gocharam. Krishna is very easily to approach. This is my favorite prayer by Queen Libby. Krishna, you're very easily approached, but not by those who have Janma, high birth, Aishvarya, opulence, Shruta, beauty, Shruta, learning, and Shri, beauty. Very difficult to approach Krishna in those ways.
Why?
Because they can't feelingly call out to the Lord.
Because they're vain.
Yeah, they can't feelingly call out to the Lord. I mean, I've seen how I know one devotee who is very beautiful, and I've realized that the beauty is a curse in her life, and just time and time again, she has these horrible experiences, and it's all because she's so beautiful. It's like perpetually
Constantly objectified.
challenged, challenged, and just people can't relate to her, and it's just the way she's always been for her. So, I mean, I can just objectively see that challenge, from a distant point. And so, it's a challenge. Of course, she's a very wonderful devotee of the Lord. So the point is that such devotees who may have these things, they don't feel themselves this way, because they understand their Tama Kenshana Gocharam. They realize that I'm materially destitute, that this beauty is only temporary, money's temporary. They can realize that. And so there are many examples of beautiful devotees, and most, obviously the gopis and Radharani are the most beautiful, but they're most humble also. But even up to the level of Uddhava, everybody knows who Uddhava is, right? Uddhava was not the friend of Krishna, but the closest friend of Krishna. He was Krishna said, "You're more dear to me than Balaram." Sankarshan, you're more dear to me than Lakshmi. Krishna said, "You're more dear to me than anybody." Uddhava was so dear to Krishna, and yet Krishna was thinking this. Uddhava thinks he knows a lot about Krishna consciousness. He said, "Go to Vrindavan." And then Uddhava saw the gopis and Mother Yashoda. And the gopis thought, "Oh, Krishna has come," because Uddhava he's such a pure devotee of Krishna, he has Salokya or Sarupya Mukti, so he looks just like Krishna. And so Uddhava was there, and he would just speak Krishna Katha to the gopis. But he was amazed. He realized, I'm nothing. I'm not a devotee. My guru is Brihaspati. I should be the greatest. I thought I was such an elevated Vedic soul, who knew the Vedas. And so then, after his whole time with the gopis, he just was like, okay, I want to just be a blade of grass. That was his prayer in Vrindavan. He's still there in Shumsharovara, over there behind it. Uddhava's there in the form of grass, and Uddhava Kund.
I think I speak to the challenge or inner conflict that people have in the process with God, and the triggering factor of how easily approach Krishna can be in a world that is constantly reinforcing the notion that God is incomprehensible and in some cases unknowable. And I lived with Tom, this Dzogchen practitioner, and I kind of asked him about this, Brahman. He calls it Brahman now, and it's actually in the scriptures. And I said, I'll tease him about it. He goes, "Oh, it's so inconceivable. It's so beyond our comprehension."
Best way I've ever found to preach to someone like him was I was preaching to him I said, why I believe in Krishna.
What was the question?
I told Tom once, I said, you know why I believe in Krishna? I said, because if you chant Hare Krishna, all that nonsense that we do stops. It was like a devastating nuclear bomb to him. He was just fried out. It's like, he actually was like, and ran away. Because, anyways, I don't want to talk about it too much, but the fact is that that's the test. That's where these Christians today, they were saying so many things, just said, we set up our thing, and then they're just psychotic. I mean, it's crazy. So they come out with this speaker actually. Every Hindu god is an idol. They start like singing this loud, blasting us. Yeah. And, like everybody was really disturbed. Students started getting disturbed and like flipping them off and coming and buying our books. Like immediately after doing no books all day, we did like 10 books within 15 minutes because these Christians Jesus was distributing books, actually. That's what I was realizing. And the thing was one of the things they were saying was, only Krishna can save you from your addictions. And I'm thinking, only Jesus can save you from I'm thinking,
you got to say that. That was good.
Like only Jesus can save, but where's our addictions at? Like we have 5 really nice devotees here, And I think Krishna, I had an experience in my life where I surrendered to Krishna, and like the day I surrendered my guru, I like let go of an addiction immediately that day. And it was like a profound experience. So I know God's grace is real. It didn't come through that process. But then at the same time, simultaneously, I know because actually Atishta Girihari, our godbrother, he spoke to the pastor of this church a lot. Because Atishta was just really weird, and he was like, I'm gonna make that guy a devotee. I'm like, Prabhu, I'm gonna see him somewhere. I was like, Prabhu, that's a bad idea. He's like, watch, I'm gonna see him somewhere. Then like that very night, he's like, Prabhu, guess who I just saw? And just talked with for like 2 hours. I'm like, no way. Krishna fulfilled his desire. But things didn't, eventually it got too heavy with that guy. But he was making some progress. But Atishta was able to like bring out the fact that this guy is just a materialist. I'm not going to go into the details, but they're in regards to the sexual nature. And so see how this is. So they're just attached. I'm good
with the Lord.
I don't know what you're talking about. I was looking at you for any particular reason. They're just attached. So attached. And I think of that verse, there's a famous verse. Sukadeva Goswami says,
he was tired of looking at me. So he had to look at another item.
Nidraya hirate vyaktam.
I think the part about my name was looking at
Vyavyayena chavavayaha. Diva charte haya rajam kutumba baranenava. That, the materialist spends their days doing 4 things. They are making money in the daytime and maintaining family. That's their absorption. Make money, take care of family. Make money, take care of them. Even though they're devotees sometimes. We love them, they're devotees, but, all they talk about, family. Oh my God, I got to make money for the family. And it's just, you see, this is totally in Maya. Money, family, money, family, money, family. It's not their fault. It's Maya's fault. And they're it's the way of the world, Of course, we have to be Krishna conscious somehow or another. And so it's their duty, so it's okay. And at nighttime, the more nefarious time, which most devotees avoid this element, sleeping uselessly and enjoying sex. That doesn't just mean enjoying the act of sex. It means, I'm enjoying all the byproducts of sex life. The association, the subtle sex association, and the association of the byproducts of my sexual activity, the children, and this kind of, like Parameshwar is always saying, trying to play Krishna. My little And so in this way, they try to enjoy, but they can't enjoy. And so we see that although these so-called spiritualists, they actually glorify this as the highest thing. And I don't see this so much as in the Catholic Church. There's a lot more like details around it. And the Catholic Church has like a monastic element and a celibate element, and it's all wonderful. Like they also appreciate the family life as a vocation, spiritual vocation. But these materialistic so-called Christians, and not condemning all Christians, I'm just saying that they glorify like anything Griha Medi life. That is it. That's like the spiritual life. Like be a good Griha Medi. Be a Griha Medi. That's it. Like yeah, you made it. Like come to our religion where you can be a Griha Medi and you won't suffer in that orange robe all the time.
Mormons are maybe the most clear example.
Oh yeah,
Family, because family is like everything that exists.
even
Beyond this world,
and
you keep having kids, and you keep that whole family dynamic.
Yeah, that's the Daksha religion, I call it, because their afterlife sounds like what Daksha wanted. He got to have 10,000 children. Actually, he got to have more than that, but we're all his descendants actually. So he's the heavenly father. The Mormon Church, maybe. Yeah. So this is their consciousness. You asked, they think God's inconceivable. Krishna says, Maya Shaktamano Partha Yogam Yunjan Marashraya Asham Sayam Samagram Mum Gita Gyasi Touch Trinu. That by practicing yoga in full consciousness of me, with mind attached to me, one can know me free from doubt, free from doubt. Just here, O son of Pritha, how by practicing yoga in full consciousness. Just here. If you just hear, you can learn how to practice yoga in full consciousness of Krishna, with mind attached to Krishna. That's the key. That's the key. You can get that process. So anyways, there's so many examples of these types of individuals who don't understand the nature of God at all. And we, speaking of this, going back to the pastor of that church that really harasses the devotees, their philosophy is totally messed up. It's a speculative philosophy. It's not even actual Christian philosophy. They have no idea the nature of God.
They just fear.
And Atishta was asking him, do you think we're children of God? You're saying, no, we're not children of God. What are we then? They had no answer. But it's just this kind of control element where it's like we have to control. And so we were saying, observing, I think I was doing Mridanga today in Nadia Bihari, that I see so many people join them and then disappear. And there's a core group, and then there's somebody that join. People who are very fearful become attracted to that type of thing. Mm-hmm. Because they want that. They need that they feel safe in that heavy control structure. They feel safe in it. Like, I don't have to think. I'm saved. Mm-hmm. And so this is unfortunate. It's an unfortunate state of being. Actually, it's very unfortunate. They can't know Krishna. And I'm not saying Christians can't know God. I think they can. I know many who do. But what I am saying is that way of doing things, you can't know God and simultaneously scream blasphemies at the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That disqualifies you from knowing God. Yeah. And, we see that Super Soul, for those who weren't there to finish the story, Super Soul smashed him. The cops got called on him.
What?
And it was getting so intense. The energy was so bad. They were becoming so aggressive that the students were getting so angry that a student came and bought a stack of books from Parameshwar, put them in his backpack, went by the Christians, flipped them off, and then called the cops on them.
That's the part.
So then the cops came and shut them down. The cops came over to us and they were like, okay, well, it's getting a little hectic, so try not to agitate them. And so then they also gave Ezekiel a little badge that said junior
officer.
Yeah. He was in bliss, man. He was coming and arresting me. And
who is this?
Vanessa's son.
Oh.
And Yeah, he was so happy. He was having a great time out there. And he was distributing books. He distributed like 7 books.
Oh,
He was
wow.
out there distributing books. And so it was really sweet to see. But, Super Soul smashed him. And I've seen I've seen so many times that when someone gets in that really offensive attitude, how a Super Soul will turn on them. Not like Krishna's impartial, but you see that if you offend the devotees. There was one kid who was coming here, Dr. Smeagol, and he was coming here, and he was here for a while. And one day he just came really crazy. He started getting aggressive with Lita Priya. And he the point shifted and I chastised the heck out of him. And he was cool. He got up and then he went and asked him the devotee outside for a ride. The devotee was like, nah. And he just said it was all at the same time, the whole message went throughout the temple that Krishna in their hearts. And then Dhiro was Dhiro was how Dhiro just had a bad day. I don't know. He was just get out of here. What's wrong? And I feel the Super Soul, just every single interaction that guy had with the devotees was just shut down because he just made that offense. And we didn't see him for months. And then he came back a while later.
His name was Smeagol.
That
That's just your pet name for
That was a
him?
joke.
Smeagol. Okay.
was just to get Garunga laughing. He was a very Smeagol type character.
What does that mean?
Smeagol's the early form of Golem, when he's kind of transitioning into soul.
Is this Lord of Seven?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he was an interesting character. And he was really, and he was I don't know, I think he was trying to harm the devotees to a degree, doing magical stuff.
Is he the tall guy?
Oh yeah, you know him really well.
You're talking about him?
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, well, you knew him. I hope he's okay. I did text him recently and he never got back to me, but he was going down a very dark path. He was using heavy drugs on the streets at a certain point.
Yeah.
But you can't mess with the stuff he was messing with. It was very dangerous.
And Kabbalah. Very weird.
Yeah, well, Kabbalah is nothing weird about it, but if you don't know what you're doing, if you're just trying to manipulate the material energy in various ways, then you're going to get hurt. So there are so many things and so many people they can't know Krishna. This verse, just to come back to this verse, and those who continuously hear and chant and take from authority what is God, they can understand. And so it's who will you believe? The Vedas have so many informations, and people have so many conceptions, but we should go to the highest knowledge, the highest source. Who's the authority of the Vedas? Krishna is. And if you don't want to accept Krishna is, we can accept Vyas. Vyas explains the authority of the Vedas is Krishna. The goal of the Vedas is Krishna. Therefore, we should follow Vyas. But
What's the goal of Ashtanga?
Ashtanga Yoga, the goal is Krishna. Yeah, of course it is.
It's not to merge into or become.
No, they may think that, but the goal of Ashtanga Yoga is ultimately Krishna.
It's taking a long way there. It's taking the stairs versus the elevator.
And that's the thing. So, okay. If there's any other points, we can conclude.
Hare Krishna.
We'll finish the prayers of Queen Kuti next week.
Thank you.